with their fancy white, blingy rivalry jerseys last night, 23-20. Wasn't enough. I like how they looked. I knew I would. I was excited about it. Being in the crowd, there was a little bit of sort of like a prom, the bling aspect to it that, I don't know, was not off-putting, but a little bit distracting, how sparkly. The shoulders, the helmets, how sparkly the Bills were.
Prom. A
little bit of a
prom me.
Yes, I mean a little bit, kind of. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but a little bit fancy for a football uniform.
All right.
I don't know. Eric Wood with us now.
Sparkles.
Nothing fancy about Eric.
Sparkles. Eric, were the numbers hard to see from the press box?
Yes, they were, and. When you get the 13 personnel on the field, we're like, okay, Knox has got a towel hanging from his back, trying to find some differentiators with certain players out there on the field to figure out who is making plays and whatnot. So Chris Brown, that's a much tougher job for him than me. He's calling it live and has got to get the right names and numbers. I can kind of piggyback what he says. But, yeah, there was some difficulty in it. But I thought overall it was a pretty cool look. And, the Bills content team always does such a good job of, promoting it and making it a big deal and all the lead up. And, unfortunately we don't get the win. So people, all that gear that everybody bought is, if this ends up being a one-time thing, you won't have a great memory of that special jersey you bought.
Well, I believe they are scheduled. It's a 3-year run is what I read, and this will be I think the Bills will wear this at least one time the next 2 seasons after this, is what I understand that plan to be. So it's not going to be one and done, despite the lack of success in yesterday's threads. I've seen some of that on social media today. Like, just get these uniforms out of here because that was bad. And I don't think it works that way, probably. So
a lot of uniforms would get retired.
What will you take away? What are you taking away from this loss, Eric?
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing is, you have sloppy play that ends up catching up to you. We've seen sloppy moments on both sides of the ball for the Bills this season. It's early in the year. You can make it, you're not going to play perfect games. There's going to be lulls on offense. You're playing against NFL players. Even if it's, a badly ranked defense, you're going to have lulls throughout the game. You rarely ever have a game like we had against New England in the playoffs where everything's perfect. And then defensively, not to make excuses, but when you have so many guys that are either dinged up or suspended or whatever it may be, you're going to struggle at times. And I thought yesterday the defense took a step in the right direction, especially in the first half, in stopping the run. And then ultimately, was there too soft the coverage at times last night? Of course. There was times that I wish the pass rush was better. Now, the Patriots are keeping in 7 a lot of times with double chips on the outside, helping both tackles with the edge rushers. And you can do that in a game you feel comfortable doing that in a game where inside you don't have their best interior pass rusher in Ed Oliver. And so, and maybe Michael Hoyt becomes one of those guys inside on passing downs as well in the future. But to me, it's almost a tip your cap to Drake Maye and Diggs. Tip the cap. They made plays in the second half especially that won them the football game. But if the Bills don't have all the penalties in the first half offensively and they don't have those 2 fumbles, I think it's another 30-point night. We win the game again, and we're sitting here having a similar conversations we had the last 2 weeks where it wasn't the prettiest, but it's another Bills victory.
They did get a lot of help on their last touchdown drive themselves, though, the Bills, with those 2 back-to-back roughing the passer and then personal foul penalties there. But, you might think, because we've seen it so many times, they get their points anyway. Although in the end, it wasn't enough. Why or how, Eric, do you think New England was able to do it defensively here? What was it up front? Game plan, anything, because while Allen, certainly made plays in this game, he was off his spot a lot and maybe even quick to be. That's just one possible, perspective.
No, I think New England has good outside corners, so if you get obvious pass situations, it's going to be tough to throw the football on the outside against them. I thought coming into the game, one of my keys to the game yesterday was to attack in the pass game, the middle of the field, the safeties and the linebackers. And Kincaid goes for over 100 for the first time in his career. Shakir's our second leading receiver. He's getting most of that production through the middle of the field. And so I thought they attacked them well there. I just felt like in the first half, I mean, I guess give New England credit for punching at the football. But this is a Bills team that generally takes care of the football. They haven't lost a fumble offensively since the Ravens regular season game last year, and I believe that was in September. And so they were able to force a couple fumbles, and then the penalties in the first half, which I'm not saying, does Hockey League call a tight game and seems that he is not generally on the Bills side? Yes. But a lot of those pre-snap penalties, the holds and all that, now you're in obvious pass situations. It's hard to stay balanced. And like I said, it's hard to throw on the outside against those two corners. And so that, and with all of that, you're only going into the half down 3. And then the second half, you find a better offensive rhythm, but you still make enough mistakes that of not winning the game. And Schopp, I saw what you saw as well, as far as there was a couple different pressure schemes that caught Josh Allen off guard. There was a quarterback blitz. There was another one earlier, which left one of the defensive linemen unblocked because we didn't have enough blockers. Both of those either resulted in sacks or pressures. And then late in the game, maybe some escaping the pocket a little quickly because of potentially some of those earlier looks that got him.
Yeah, like even there's a play, I don't know if you've seen it, Eric, but it's made the rounds all day today of the 3rd and 10 that preceded the tying field goal the Bills end up kicking, where Allen appears to bail out of a clean pocket. He's got Samuel running across the formation from his right to left. And even with the safety staying home on that side of the field, it's still pretty open. I'd even give it wide open, and I'm a real stickler about that. But Allen, I think the spy, whoever that was on that play, is uncovered in the middle of the line. And Allen it feels to me like Allen looks right at him and thinks, this guy's coming and no one's here. So I got to get out of here. And instead, the guy just sort of drifted. As Allen drifted out to his right, this guy moved out to his left and sort of mirrored him a little bit rather than coming in through that hole. Easy for us to say, watching it back 100 times, that, he didn't have to bail out on that pocket. But the bigger thing is not seeing Samuel there. Anyway, it just all adds up to they were in a lot of obvious passing situations. You used that phrasing a moment ago, because their run game for the first time all year just really could not get going.
Yeah, for sure. And then there were times where you pop a decent run, it's a hold. Well, now it's 2nd and 15, and you're not likely going to run the ball in that situation. And on the play with Allen, I saw that as well. And, I never played quarterback, so I don't know exactly, in that moment what his process is there. I will say Josh Allen has made a living making highlight reel plays where that right defensive end, the defensive end to his right, comes under the tackle, and then he rolls out, finds a guy on the move, and we all celebrated. And,
right.
We don't maybe look to see if there was a guy coming open the other way. And there's times where he does that, and we probably don't even notice because the Bills win by 13, 14 points. But in a critical moment, it's extremely valuable there. And so, like I said, I don't want to even pretend like I've sat in a quarterback's meeting to know where, hey, Josh, that defensive end comes underneath. They're likely trying to funnel you out that way so that the spy can come mirror you. I'm sure Josh, I'll say this, I'm sure Josh would love to have that play back. And
sure. Yeah.
Shoot, there's games that Josh lights it up and wins an AFC Offensive Player of the Week award, and he probably sits there and films the next day, kicking himself over plays very similar to that one.
I just had an instinct earlier with respect to that play to blurt out that maybe he wouldn't have been able to see Samuel as easily because everything is white. But I meant it as a joke, and since I've said it, I'm not even sure it's funny. Like it might have been thing. You never played quarterback. What else did you play, by the way? Were you always a lineman?
I played tight end until my senior year of high school, and then that's when my journey as a lineman started.
Okay. Was that hands related, Eric, or just you were so big and powerful they had to move you inside?
It was frame related, and I give Jeff Brom, the head coach at the University of Louisville, who was our quarterbacks coach at the time, recruiting Cincinnati area. I was a 6'4", 205 tight end, which isn't even that big by tight ends standards, my junior year of high school, and he said, "Your shoulders are so wide, and I just feel like you could really put on some weight and be a really athletic offensive lineman as opposed to a fairly athletic, tight end." And I took his word for it, and I ended up getting one scholarship offer, and he offered it, so I'm glad I followed his advice.
Right, that's a fit. Did you ever play defense? You probably would have played defense, too, in high school.
We only played one side of the ball at my high school, but growing up until high school, I would play both ways, and I would play either defensive end or defensive tackle.
Big school.
So, Eric,
we had some success in high school. Not to brag, but we were pretty good. We were top 10 in the country my last 3 years and won 2 Ohio State titles. So we were pretty good.
Pretty good.
Last 3 years. I mean, high school's only 4, so I mean that's a pretty good rate there. You were at the top. What did you make of Drake Maye? I mean, I phrased it, and maybe I should reel it back in. He looks to me a lot like Josh Allen light. He was every bit of Josh Allen last night.
Yeah, he looked good. I mean, I watched him play some in college and thought this guy could have a serious future. He seems to have that competitiveness in him, that improvisational skills with also having the arm talent, size, speed, and still being able to operate from the pocket. So to me, when asked about the quarterbacks in last year's draft class, my take that I would have drafted Drake Maye over Jaden Daniels and anybody else didn't look very last year when Jaden Daniels wins the AFC Offensive Player of the Year. And, Drake Maye's playing with the worst offense in all of football based upon the people that were surrounding him. I thought he looked good last night. He made some plays. It's the first team with a winning record that Drake Maye has beaten. Now, that might not be that fair to him considering how bad his surrounding talent was last year in New England. But, he's got a great competitive drive to him. He made some great plays last night. There was, a couple plays to Diggs along the sideline, and I don't want to say they're 50-50 plays, but they're inches away from being an incompletion. If those don't go their way, then we might be having a different conversation today. But I like what I see in him, and I wish he wasn't in the division.
Yeah, right.
I don't know from your vantage point, and you've got a job to do, how much time you're able to spend looking at Diggs, watching Diggs on the sideline, and just all that you get from him in a game. You've seen him for years, of course. I was the third row right behind their bench, and man, he is just like all over everything. He's probably, we know this. I mean, he might be a lot for coaches or for teammates sometimes because you maybe can't calm him down, but it's probably also what makes him great. Still, there was tons of energy on the Patriot side, and not just once they got a 10-point lead either. And you'd have to say, I think that Diggs has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I would say so. And, when a guy in Stefon's situation is going back to play a former team, it's not everybody that's going to have this kind of emotional thing. It's how big of a name he was in Buffalo, the success we had, how he left, and everything else. I'm sure throughout the week they were talking about that a lot. And, there's times where Stefon goes to the sideline and sits on the bench when we see that in Buffalo. And then there's other times where he's chirping throughout the game and trying to get everyone going. I mean, he's pretty inconsistent as a person, just in general. I think that's pretty well noted, just from his time in Buffalo and this offseason and all that. But I'll say this. I haven't said this to anybody else. I had a teammate, a really good buddy of mine was his teammate in Minnesota. And when we traded for Diggs, I asked him, what are we getting in Stefon Diggs? He said, Stefon is great till he's not. And we got that experience in Buffalo. And last night, the Patriots got great Stefon Diggs.
Yeah, they're still in the honeymoon period, and that right. Might have been,
right.
Obviously
and
the peak.
That sounds like a shocking statement, but it just it kind of sums it up. I'm sure, and I got to see it through the NBC coverage that was on in front of us where we're checking replays. I mean,
right.
They had him on the camera constantly last night, and he was chirping. He's playing to the moment and all that, and I get that. I mean, And there were times during games where I had to be more vocal on the sideline or whatever it may be. I'm not saying that every game I had the exact same demeanor on the sideline as well as a captain of the team. But, Stefon was putting on a show last night.
Eric, the Bills and Patriots meet again December 14th, week 15, more than 2 months away. Here's New England's schedule between now and then. They're 3-2. Saints, Titans, Browns, Falcons, Bucks, Jets, Bengals, Giants. How good can they be? Is this going to be a race?
It could be. It could be. And, if they can stay healthy on both sides of the ball, they have a good squad. And they could be a tough team. And Abel can get them to play with that type of effort, intensity each and every week that they played with last night at Buffalo. I mean, not that the Bills weren't up for that game, but that's a litmus test for New England. All they heard all week was, let's see if you could stack up. I mean, it's essentially what we all felt like when we went against New England during my time with the Bills. Okay, we're off to a decent start here, but now we play the Patriots. Here we go. Let's see what we got. Let's give them our best shot. And so we'll see if they can bring that same intensity each and every week that we saw and playmaking ability and all of that. But, we all said it before the season. We thought New England was likely our biggest competition within the division. And the Bills had a real opportunity last night to separate themselves and give themselves a nice cushion there. But, we'll see. I mean, when you get the number 4 pick in the draft, you get to play the worst teams from the other divisions, and that's part of where the parity comes from in the NFL.
Right. They have the same schedule as the Bills, except they play the Raiders instead of Kansas City, and they've lost to the Raiders. And then they would play whoever it is from the AFC South, Tennessee, whereas the Bills would play Houston.
Yeah.
Earlier I did their next 3 games, then I realized I could keep going, and then with you I just did their next 8. Here's the rest of it. The bye week is before the Bills rematch. Then they go Ravens, Jets, Dolphins. That's a playoff team. With that schedule, that's a playoff team, at least.
I would assume so. Yeah, I would assume so. Yeah, like I said, I mean, you could never predict injuries throughout a season. I don't know how deep that team is. I don't know how deep most teams are in the NFL.
Yeah, right.
But, that's a different defense without Christian Gonzalez, who, returned to the lineup a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago. This was his 3rd game back, I believe, against the Bills. But it's a different defense without him. It's a different, offense without maybe a couple guys. And so we'll see how it all shakes out. But, yeah, it looks – I'm not going to predict them to run the table, obviously. But,
no.
Yeah, it sure looks like they'll be a playoff team.
Eric, recognizing that the game is still not even 24 hours old here, do you think – from watching it and now, talking about it a few different times today and just thinking on it, did New England discover some antidote to the Bills' rushing game? Hawes might have played the least snaps he played since the opener. I didn't go back and look, but it was down from what they had been doing in previous weeks.
We're not sure. They just couldn't read the numbers either.
Right? Maybe it's possible, I guess. But did they do anything special that you noticed to thwart the Bills' rushing game? Because it's been so much of who they've been here for the last season plus.
Yeah, I don't know that there's an antidote other than they have 3 good defensive tackle DN guys. It's not a traditional old school 3-4 defense, but they play with a bigger base defense than most. And most teams don't have that. And that's where you saw them maybe not getting as much 13 personnel and 22 personnel that we saw because they can match it, and those guys are used to playing. The Dolphins go to a 4-4 defense to try and stop the Bills' rushing attack with 13 personnel, and they don't even run that. So you feel really good about, taking advantage of the scheme that they're putting in on the same week. I truly believe that if the Bills could have stayed in rhythm, if they could have caught a lead, if they wouldn't have continuously backed themselves up with penalties, that James Cook could have had another productive night. But when you're constantly moving backwards, it's hard to stay in a rhythm with the run game. It's hard for James Cook. Generally I'm like, hey, here's the body blows, 4 yards, 5 yards, 4 yards. Eventually he's going to pop one. Well, it's hard to get back-to-back runs when here comes another hold or pre-snap procedure, and that's not a ref blame. That's a self-inflicted.
Yep.
You get pre-snap penalties and offensive PI on screens. That's your own fault.
Yeah, that handoff to Knox that didn't work out. Interesting. I want to talk about this some more as we go today because, sitting in the crowd, why would you need to run that? You're trying to establish this game, and now we're doing a little bit of something akin to a trick play. They get the ball right back, and remember the first play after the Patriots fumble? It's a flea flicker.
Flea flicker.
Yeah, maybe to me that would suggest, and these are maybe in the point of the game where the plays are scripted in advance, that there was a little bit of insecurity about what they could do, just, if you will, straight up against New England, coming out with reverses and flea flickers so early. I mean, they completed the flea flicker, not for huge yards, but they did get that off at least. I know, maybe.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I don't feel like Joe Brady went into the game thinking we can't go against them straight up. My guess would be they got a situation where they felt really good about when they pack in their base defense, Knox can outrun someone to the corner. We get that on film. Now everyone's got to prepare for it. Every time our tight ends go in motion, they could hand the ball off to him too.
Yeah.
It ended up in disaster. I don't think we'll see it again this year. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll see it this week. My guess is, I often talk about it on the broadcast, in between the 40s after a turnover, that's the area of the field that everyone loves a shot. Oh, turnover, let's take a shot. Here we go. Let's take a shot. And the Bills likely, and just guessing, came into the game. If we get a turnover between here, flea flicker, we're going to try and catch them off guard and take them down the field. It's either that or Joe Brady said, oh, man, I know I'm going to get crushed for getting cute. Let me try this again.
I'll show
and
him.
If this weren't crushed anymore, and I say that, I'm sure he didn't think that. I'm sure, I'm sure they were confident that they could get some yards on that one.
I didn't notice if anybody was running deep on that play. You would think so. On a flea
flicker usually, yeah, but neither did I see. No,
they got 20 from Samuel there. Okay, Eric. So
they went to take the deep shot, and that's what happens a lot of times. Everyone sucks up. You think it's a run. Then the safety says, "Oh shoot, I got to get all the way back so we don't give up the home run." And then you generally get the crosser on those plays.
Okay, Monday night next week. So we'll talk again on the pregame show, I guess.
Absolutely. I'll be tuning in from Atlanta.
Yes, sir. All right. Thanks, Eric.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
All right, have a good week. We'll check in with you, next Monday, like Mike said. We will handle